Again, we're going to go over the AlumaFeed system and the new gun. Just as an FYI, we do have everybody on the call that have muted. That's just to eliminate some background noise. If you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or use the chat feature down on the bottom. I have Ron Gross behind the computer, looking for any questions through that chat feature. So if a question comes up, the chat would be our preferred method. But if we need more conversation, please feel free to unmute yourself. And then we'll open it up at the end for any conversation or questions at the end as well. So again, AlumaFeed XR box, mainly the changes and the updates that were made to this system are hardware, not necessarily software changes, which is good. We've upgraded the system and made it better without ruining any of the ARC performance, in my opinion. So I love the way this machine welds aluminum, and we haven't ruined any of that. So the first place I want to start with is the gun. Meant to have this up there here a minute ago, but the front end of this gun has not changed a whole lot. Same consumable, same nozzle, same tip, same liner through the entire system, and really from here forward has not changed. We still have the wire-feeded tensioner on the side here from your 4,000 to 5,000. The door opens up for your wire feeding. Really, the front end of this gun has not changed. The back end of it now has a ball and socket design, very similar to that MDX gun, giving us a little more flexibility, as well as a molded rubber strain relief off the back side of it here. This spot was a huge issue with really any push-pull gun. It's what takes up a lot of the stress. Typically with that copper cable coming frayed and broken and then overheating it, or motor control cables or wires getting pulled out, gas hose getting crimped and bent and restricting flow or causing leaks. So this little addition to the back of the gun, just to take some of that pressure off the back. Inevitably this thing ends up getting hung over the edge of a boat right there, or over the side of a railing or whatnot. That's there to try and alleviate some of that strain on those internal components. The inside of the cable cover now, we've eliminated one of the copper lines to give us the amperage and the voltage. We replaced that with just a single line and made it a little bigger so we can handle the amperage still. Duty cycle on this gun is the same as the old. We're not sacrificing anything there. The gas hose inside of here is now a plastic gas hose called Hydro. Very similar to the hose that would be on the back of a 350P or 252, that clear kind of white gas hose. It is a plastic gas hose, so it doesn't have any oil in it to cause contamination. Doesn't break down like the rubber hoses do. And that hose was added in there for porosity issues and contamination issues to try and alleviate that. The third main thing that we changed on this gun is the actual cable. So kind of hard to tell, but this cable is no longer leather or Kevlar. It's a rubber cable covering. It's the same cable or same rubber that's used on the racks. So it's extremely strong and durable, made to slide over stuff and hold up in those extreme conditions. By going with the rubber cable cover and eliminating one of those copper lines inside of this gun is now 15% lighter than it used to be. So that was a major concern with these guns is the weight. So we took some weight out of it, hopefully relieve some of the pain points and issues off the back of the gun with the strain relief and the ball and socket. Took out some of the copper issues that could have, instead of having one cable or two cables in there that could go bad, there's now only one, and then the hose, stopping it from breaking down. So My first impression when I seen this gun a while back was that we've made it bigger and nobody's gonna like it. And first impression when you're looking at it, we went from a gun that was this big to now a gun that's this big. So yeah, it does appear to be bigger. But with this just being off the back and that strain relief, you can already see as I've been using this gun, it's already starting to flex and give more. It doesn't feel any bigger when you're using it. It's the same, same shape and same usability that we've had before. So this upgrade design back here and the cable covering is available on both the air-cooled version and the water-cooled version. Right now, we have not put this on the Plus gun or the Pistol Pro gun, so those are staying the same as of right now. This is just for the standard XR Illuma Pro gun. So the next spot that we want to talk about is the feeder. The feeder software-wise hasn't changed. Like I mentioned earlier, it was mostly mechanical. We went from this big blue aluminum box, right, that was made out of metal, to the Arc Reach 12 feeder. I don't know the answer to that, Dave. Can we reach out to service to replace the sheath from a labor perspective? I'm not sure what you mean. I'll unmute you in a minute and you can explain what you're asking. But so we went from the metal box to the plastic 12 Arc Reach feeder box, a little smaller, a little more compact. This box here, if they set this up on a boat or on their homemade carts, I know a lot of people like to make their own carts for this system. If these bolts or nuts on the sides or the hinges for the door come in contact with the cart or anything like that, and the cart happens to be grounded, we would see some arcing out issues. So going to the plastic case on the 12, the Arc Reach feeder, not an issue anymore. The only metal on that really is right there on the faceplate around the button, the interface. The Arc Reach feeder case compared to the old metal box is 25% lighter. We went from 42 pounds to 31 pounds between the two. The internal inside of this feeder was pretty big and had a lot of room. One of the issues I ran across a lot with this feeder was on a new spool of wire. If they didn't have this brake set on side for the spool, perfect. As that spool would start to spin and they'd stop, the wire would actually jump off the spool and cause tangling on the inside of the feeder. Going with the Arc Reach feeder, that area for that spool is a lot smaller, so that should alleviate it. Not saying it's going to completely go away, but there's less room in there for that wire to jump over that spool and become tangled. Also, we have eliminated inside of that feeder the gas flow meter. There's no longer a gas flow meter on the new XR AlumaFeed system. If they want a flow meter, there is an external one that will bolt to the back of the machine or back of the feeder. That is an option. It does not come standard. Can't tell you how many times I've walked into a customer and they've had a flow meter on a bottle and then a flow meter inside of there and they're having soot issues or porosity issues. So we've just completely gotten rid of that. No longer need a pressure regulator or anything here. We're just flow meter off the bottles. Take care of a lot of that. Take care of a lot of that porosity or overgas issue. When I got here today, we were doing some welds and we actually had too much gas coverage. We were telling it we only wanted 25 off the wall, but we weren't getting 25. So, see here. On the software side of things, if we jump over to the feeder. Okay. Before we go through the software, Dave, we're going to unmute you. Ask your question or. You're unmuted.
I'm just going to reach out to Vandenberg. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm just concerned about, you know, if they have to, if they get a tear in that Hypalon sheath to recover and or replace, and then will it retrofit to an older Illuma Pro? From your common sense of removing a cable, I'm sure that that current sheath is, you know, stretched to a certain ID. I doubt it's probably going to go back to the older design, but I'll check into that. It's just something, a point I wanted to bring up and see if you knew the answer or if you heard any response to that.
You know, looking at this cable covering, Dave. Hold on. You know, looking at this cable, it's on here pretty loose. I don't see any reason why it won't go on an old gun. It's just Velcroed on.
Okay, so that answers my question right there. So even through a trial, if it got torn or ripped or whatever, since it's a Velcro, we could at least try dimensionally if it's going to work. That answers my question.
Yep, I don't see any reason why. I mean, it's pretty snug. There's not much room in there, but I don't think it'll be an issue taking it off and putting it back on or replacing it. So
okay,
and just overall feel of it, yeah, it is rubber. It's pretty thick rubber coating here. I mean, it's not chintzy made. It's pretty solid stuff. I'm not too worried about it getting torn up too badly.
Nice. Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Yep. So we're gonna jump to the feeder. Yeah, good. From an operating standpoint, the front panel has been shrunk up a little bit. The top line is our arc length or voltage. Bottom line is going to be our wire feed speed or amperage. This knob on the left controls the arc length. Knob on the right will control wire feed speed when I'm in my schedule. Right now I'm on schedule A, so it's still controlled by the gun. If I'm in schedule B, my wire feed speed control is here. Across the bottom, I have my setup, hot start, and crater functions. And then just below the cable plug here, just below where the cable plugs into the feeder, is my purge and my wire feed jog button. So just there on the bottom. Very similar setup to the 12VS style feeders. Software wise, again, it's almost identical, just a little bit smaller, interface here. Setup, if we jump into the setup button, it will look identical to the old system. So I have my trigger. Within trigger, I have a trigger hold, a 4T trigger, so just an optional trigger I can set up. A spot trigger. We're going to keep it on our 2T. The pulse. This is where I would set it to either pulse weld or MIG weld. This has been an update for the last little bit, but we used to have to set it pulse here as well as on the feeder. If I set it on the feeder now, or sorry, if I had to set it on the feeder, and I also had to set it on the power source. Now, all I have to do is set it on the feeder. If I change it on the feeder, it will automatically change it on the power source for me. My pre and post flow gases, I typically run a pre and post flow all the time on any process I can. If that option is there, I'm going to probably run it. I like the pre-flow just to blow any debris or atmosphere out of the way, give me a nice clean arc start. And the post-flow I like to run just so I can cool the tip and nozzle, try and make those last a little longer, especially on an air-cooled system. Run-in is the travel speed that the wire would come into to establish the arc. 30 is a percentage. This will go all the way down to 10 and all the way up to 100, but at 100, it's essentially shut itself off. From the factory, 30 is the recommended speed, and that's 30% of my programmed wire feed speed. That wire is going to come in and make contact with the part and initiate the arc. If you've got a guy that's got this turned up and he's complaining about wire feeding issues or starting issues, this is a good place to start. Essentially, that wire's coming out and hitting the part, and causing the gun to buck, might cause some issues at the beginning of the weld. If he's got it turned up really high with a 5000 series wire, could cause some bird nesting inside the feeder. So factory's 30. I've had guys say, well, that's just too slow. It comes out too slow. We're talking half a second that it's running this wire, maybe. So that seems a little, not a valid excuse for me. The profile pulse, if that's turned off, that's my last menu in my front setup panel. If I turn profile pulse on, I'll get a few more options. Profile pulse is the option to pulse between a background amperage and wire feed speed and voltage to a peak wire feed speed amperage voltage. The options I get in there is a frequency, so how many times per second. Right now I'm running 3. The next one is my wire feed speed. Again, this is a percentage, but this is a percentage pulse. So right now it's set to 30. That is the highest it will go. It won't go any higher there. Just for an example, easy math, if I'm running 100 inches a minute of wire feed speed, that's what I've got set on the feeder. I'm going to pulse between 130 and 70, right? So we're going to be bouncing back and forth between those wire feed speeds, amperages, and voltage will all be pulsing back and forth. If I'm right on the edge of a part of burning through, but I need to still cool it down and get good penetration, I can turn this on. And with that pulse going between the background and the peak, I get the wettability of the upper end, but I can cool it down. I can also be on the verge of not getting penetration and turn this on and get a little better punch with it, which we'll do here in just a little bit. But it's just another option. Profile pulse, most of the time people think of it as the ability to stack dimes, and it will stack dimes if we want to. But on a structural side of things, it can actually give us a little bit better penetration without having to turn up my wire feed speed. The last option that we have here is the pulsing for the arc length. Typically leave that at 1. It's going to automatically pulse my voltage with the wire feed speed pulses. This is if I want to add any additional voltage to it, which I haven't found a reason to do that yet. So we're going to leave that at 1. Back to the main menu there. If I hit the setup button and hold it, we'll get into a background menu. First option is our locks. We can turn the locks on. That'll lock the machine up so that people can't get in and change it. Notice as soon as I did that, a lock popped up on the right-hand side there. Limits. Again, if I want to restrict somebody and where they're running, I turn limits on. I'll get a min and a max on my wire feed speed, as well as a min and a max on my arc length. Right now, they're completely opened up. But if I want to turn those on, all I have to do is go to the limits, turn it on, and set those. Shut limits off. Probably the most important part for me in the background menu is this wire settings. I'm going to set the wire process on the power source still. That hasn't changed. But the wire here is mostly for the control of the drive motor on the inside of the feeder. This is the same drive motor that was on the old box. As far as I can tell, it hasn't changed. It's still a 2-drive system, and it's an assist push feeder. If I have the wire setting here wrong, then I don't know how much of torque to apply down here. So if I'm running a 3/64 or a 1/16 wire, but this is turned way down to an 0.35 diameter, I'm not giving the proper torque to that wire inside of here, which can cause feeding issues or burn back to the tip. Same issue if I've got this turned all the way up to 1/16 and I'm running a small diameter. It causes issues, right? It doesn't allow the feeder to work at its optimum range. So we just want to make sure that gets set. This has nothing to do with the welding process. It's solely to do with the driving mechanism inside the feeder. The system will automatically recognize the gun that we have plugged into it by turning it to auto. So I change this out for a pistol pro gun. It will automatically pick that up. I don't have any control of that. The biggest change that we've made to the system is our gun calibration. So this particular feeder here is a field test unit, and it has some older software into it. Gun calibration is no longer available on the new XR AlumaFeeder. It is in this machine, but it does not work. It does not do anything for me. And the new feeders, if you order one today, the gun calibration will not be there. It has been eliminated from the system. So just want to make that clear. Power source auto. We have the ability to change that from auto to manual. This is the AlumaFeed system. When we're in a pulse, we are running a synergic waveform. This is basically telling it to run synergic. If I turn that to manual, I'm no longer in that synergic waveform, and we'll have to fine tune and adjust it on my own. Arc length. I can change it from arc length to voltage when I'm in the pulse feature. Again, if I go to voltage, I'm no longer in a synergic waveform, and I have to adjust my voltage independently. I don't know why I would change that to voltage unless I was doing some kind of automated system or something extremely crucial and I had to run a very certain voltage. But for the most part, arc length is where we're going to keep it. Schedule. Right now, I do have my schedule turned on. So if I bump the trigger, I'm going to change from schedule A to schedule B. Schedule A is wire feed speeds controlled on the gun. Schedule B will be controlled here. I've got this set up with profile pulse turned on for schedule B, but turned off for schedule A. So if you buy a new system, I've seen this where the profile pulse is actually turned off here. If it's turned off in the background menu, it will not be available in that front menu. No additional cost to get there. Just have to turn it on in the background menu. So after profile pulse, we get into some diagnostic codes and information of the system. We won't go into that stuff, but that's basic setup of the machine. It hasn't really changed a whole lot for some of you guys that know the XR feed box extremely well. The software in here has not changed. The only thing that's going to be different really is the gun calibration, and it will not be in the new feeder. It's not available. So, are there any questions for the gun, the feeder control box, anything like that? The power source has not changed. It is the same Illuma power source, which means the gun and the feeder are backwards compatible. No issues there.
Hey, Remington, what drive rolls do they have in there? Is it still the old little ones, or is it?
About the drive rolls. Drive roll systems are the same. They have not changed. Drive motor is the same. Drive motor, as far as I can tell, are the same. So why did we get rid of gun calibration? Most of the time when somebody was doing a gun calibration, they didn't have the gun fully stretched out. They had old liners in it. They had old contact tips in it. And the gun calibration was causing more issues than fixing issues. Now, I have been to a customer where gun calibration did fix the problem, but it was after like 5 gun calibrations that they had already done before I got there. So just to eliminate that issue, if there's a feeding problem, there's a maintenance issue that needs to be taken care of, right? They've got bad liners. They've got the wrong tension on the drive motors. They got worn contact tips. So it was a decision by the engineers back at the factory that gun cal caused more problems than fixed, and the decision was to just eliminate that. Let the gun, when we plug that gun into the feeder, it automatically recognizes it. It automatically picks up what is what the tension or what the motor should be. So the feeder's doing all that for us, and we shouldn't have to calibrate it out of factory specifications. So that's a good question. I'm sucking up here. I know he's the boss. Come on. We're gonna get into a couple welds here real quick. Just to run the system here and do a few welds. The importance of the system of these demos anyways, isn't necessarily the new system, because it runs identical to the old system. We just want to go through and show some best practices aluminum welding, and kind of talk through a little bit of that. I've got some 1/4 inch 6061 fillet welds here. We're going to do some 6-inch fillets, and then we're going to break those. We're going to do these welds in 3 different settings. The first one is just a stringer weld. The second one we're going to do with a back step and kind of weave it, which is what we typically see. I feel like most boats are built for aesthetics, not strength. So we're going to just talk a little bit about structural welding with that back step and what happens when we do that back step. And we're going to do a 3rd weld using the profile pulse, and showing you what that can do and where we see that helpful. So first weld I want to do is going to be just that standard back step. I'm going to run this right about 560 inches a minute of wire speed. And some guys are thinking, wow, that's really hot. And I will agree, it is pretty hot. But with 6061 being a harder aluminum, it takes a little more amperage, a little more punch to get that root penetration, especially on this fillet weld design. So once we're done with the weld, we're actually going to break these over and look for root penetration. I want to get, with a 364 wire, I want to be right about 230 to 250 amps, and that's on the bare minimum of getting root penetration on 1/4 inch material. So we're gonna run those welds all at the same parameter, and just show what difference the technique will do as we do those welds. So the first one, we're gonna do just a straight stringer weld. Great. I changed it to profile pulse. Let's try that again. Ron's screwing with me. Turn my profile pulse on, I'm guessing. All right. Try that again. Okay. So just a nice clean 1/4 inch fillet weld there. Nothing special. Just tried to maintain that travel speed. Now we're going to do the same weld, and we're gonna step it over. And dime stack weld. So basically just stepping out in front of the puddle and then letting her fill back up and giving me that appearance. And I get it. I look at that weld and I think, man, that's pretty nice. I like the appearance. And something that's not structural, all day long, every day is not an issue. I don't typically have issues with that. But if I'm looking down inside of a boat where you're looking at the gunnel or the longitudinal bracings, that's where I get a little queasy. So 6061 will require a little more amperage than a 5086 or a 5052. But it still requires the proper amount of amperage as well as the proper technique. So, as you can see, these samples break pretty easily, even being a 1/4 inch fillet weld. Okay. So the first one we're going to look at is the dime stack. And immediately you can see the black soot across the line there. When we're looking at that black soot, you can almost see everywhere I stepped into the puddle and everywhere I stepped out in front of it. Creates that sawtooth action. That soot is the same black soot that would be on top of the weld after I was done welding it. And it's just basically a highlighter, and it's highlighting that edge of the 1/4 inch coupon here. The stringer weld, however, nice, clean, good penetration all the way down. I did miss it a little bit there at the beginning. That's pretty common to miss that right there. You can see at the beginning of the weld, the material's cold. It's hard to get that penetration. So typically you will miss it a little bit at the beginning, which is okay, as long as the penetration travels through the full effective sides of the weld. So the next weld we're going to do is a profile pole. So I'm right on the limit. I don't know what the amperage was when we welded that, but we are right on the limit of getting that full penetration all the way down. So we're going to change it to profile pulse now. Make sure we're turned on. Okay. Going to run the same parameter. Yeah, so I'm running three pulses per second, 30% peak and background, and just leaving my arc length pulse the same. Parameter wise, we're going to run it identical. So right at that 200 or 560 amps. Wire feed speed there, yeah, sorry. So again, I'm using the pulser not necessarily for appearance. I do still see those ripples, but I'm mostly interested in that extra punch, right? 560 inches a minute of wire feed speed. I'm essentially pulsing between 250-ish and 220 and probably close to 700. So we're really getting a lot of extra punch out of that. I'm not really adding any additional heat input to that weld, but just getting enough of it that it will get a little better penetration. So again, beginning of the weld, not too concerned about that, but as you can see the rest of the way down, sufficient penetration. It's actually pretty jagged, which is kind of what I want to see, that base material pulling out of it. It definitely dug a lot more than that 1/4 inch than the stringer weld did for sure. So the filler we're using on this system is a 5356 Hobart wire, 5000 series, the 100% argon gas, and then the placer 6061. And 6061 being a harder aluminum will always require a little more amperage. If we were on the sheet material, say the hull of the boat, the outside skins, the 5000 series just won't require that 240 amps. We can usually take about 30 amps out of it and get easier penetrations. So most of the time where we need to run those higher amperages is going to be on that extruded aluminum tubing, angle iron, or channel, whatever that may be. So. So if there's any other questions, you guys feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions. This is a system I'm pretty excited about, just because we upgraded and we made some substantial upgrades to it in the usability of it without hurting anything as far as the arc performance or anything like that. So, you know, the feeder is now lighter, it's more durable, it's easier to be carried around and out in the shipyard. The power source we're using right now is an Illuma power source. We can put this on the Envision MPA. It'll work just fine, the feeder and the gun side of things. But right now we're just running the Illuma power system right here. So if I'm running 4943, the Illuma power actually has a 4943 schedule in it, so I would recommend running the 4943 schedule. On a structural steel or structural aluminum side of things, that 4943 is pretty good for like your hand railings and that kind of places where you need some better strength, but you want some good appearance. But I don't know if I would be doing that on the inside of the boat. I don't think it's got enough strength for that kind of stuff. So. But the power source has not changed. It's still the Illuma power system. It's the same software. So. But like I said, this is a big improvement as far as durability. Just the additions to the gun, getting rid of the copper cable, and again, like I said earlier, I feel like this rubberized covering is pretty strong, and it's significantly lighter. So I'm not too. I mean, it's leather obviously is probably the strongest source that we're going to come up with, but it's pretty heavy. So. The new Illuma Pro gun will work on the Illuma feed system. It'll work on a 255, 350p, 252. The only thing this does not work on will be an MPA style feeder. That MPA or the Envision MPA or XMT MPA feeders, those are a Illuma Pro Plus gun. This is not. So. It will not. That's really the only machine that this won't work on is the MPA style feeders. But everything else it has full capability. So, but. Well, if there's any other questions, I'll hang out for just a few more minutes. We appreciate the time and the participation. If anything else comes up, please give us a call afterwards. But otherwise, if there's no other questions, we'll see you soon. Hope to get out to that side of the country in the near future. It's been way too long since I've been over there. So have a great week, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.